my other device, and then we can get really started. There. There'll be a tiny bit of interference a second.
Okay.
Sorted. That was easy. That was painless. That was called organization. 7:10. We're online. We're all ready to go. I've got a can of Lucozade because I've been quite ill this week. Other than that, we're going to talk about. Well, this is part one of my Caligula trilogy, where you suddenly start to find out that Caligula did invade Britain, and what the historian said about him was a load of nonsense. But that's not going to come completely apparent today because we've got loads of other things to do. And also, I've got to try and make Richard a doodah. So I'm going to make Richard a doodah now. Right, Richard's going to be a doodah. Richard is now a doodah. Right, okay. And I'll announcement. Anna's rejoined us, but I don't know in what form. She sent a membership over today, so no news from Pat. But I don't think Pat's situation is something that I can't really report on. So let's just see if there's anything that I've got right before anyone mentions it. I've got that shipwreck to look at. Goff. I've got something about the Arctic to look at, Goff, and I know some stuff has been sent to me by Henry about the Sahara, which we're not doing this week. And other than that, let's see if anyone's got any news. Right, so let's find out if Bill has got any news for us. Bill?
Nothing, Carl. I'm out of touch at all, but something must have been happening in the papers somewhere across the world. So sorry. Pass on that.
Well, basically, Stalin has come back and he's going to lead Russia to a new age, and the USSR is going to come back, and we're going to see a new Cold War. You haven't missed much.
No, I'm glad I haven't got TV these days. There we are.
Right. So on that note, Goff, anything you want to tell us, babe?
Not in the 2 articles I sent you. Yeah.
Right. That's what we're going to do. Richard, have you got any news for us? Richard looks quite sexy tonight. He's almost, I think he's had a haircut. Richard! Richard! Oh, for God's sake. Richard, you know, if I wanted to look into your ear, by the way, Richard shaves his ears because he hasn't got any ear hairs. Right, talking about ear hairs, Henry, what can you tell us?
Right. This will make William very happy.
Go on.
For the last 100 years, sat in the Cairo Museum has been a metallic object, which they've now identified to be a copper metallic drill for drilling. And it's 5,000 years old.
Copper, useless for drilling.
It's a metallic. It's a mixture of metals.
Well, a bronze?
It doesn't say.
So they knew how to smelt something in with copper then to produce something better.
But it's actually a drill.
Drill, that's interesting. Is there a picture of it anywhere?
It's on arconews.net.
Right, okay. Can you send me a link somewhere? I'll email me what that is.
I don't know if this. Basically, the site is arkeonews.net.
ARK, yeah. Say again.
EON EWS.net.
EWS.net. Any dots between the arc and the con and the...
No, the Arco News is all one word.
Okay, thanks, Henry. I'll have a look at that. Because Carl knows my theories on metal tools in Egypt.
Yeah, I thought that would make you happy.
Thank you.
Where's Carl gone?
I don't know.
Who cares?
Where's he gone? You trying to find it? That's Carl. Egyptian drill holes. There we are. Got it.
I thought I'd make you happy.
Oh, that will, yeah. I'm determined to prove the Iron Age went far back,
Oh, so
further back. I'm in Egypt.
I found it on there. So what we're going to do, we're gonna go back and we're going to find the Egyptian drill holes. I don't know how many Richards there are this evening, but there's a fair few. Right. So let's crack on and so here we go. Let's just see what we got. And oh right, where is it?
Are
There.
we still not to tell Goff about the other thing?
Oh right. Code AR. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, right. So, 5,300-year-old bow drill rewrites story of ancient Egyptian tools. Oh, this is what you're talking about, yeah?
Yes.
A bow
What's
drill. Let's see if this is there an image of it on you?
I don't know if there is on that.
There.
That's the bow drill you just showed there. Is that it?
That's
That's
it.
the drill.
And it's been sat in the
Blimey.
museum for over 100 years.
That looks quite sophisticated, doesn't it? Wow.
It's been left in a box. I think they put Karl-James Langford should have been looking at this.
I'd like to know more about that, about the metallurgy. I really would.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's see what it says. Right. Okay. So
Yeah, well, I thought
First of
I'd
all-
upset you.
first of all, we got the old metal bow drill, right? Which is basically, it looks like.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay, so it goes to show the following. A small metal tool from pre-dynastic cemetery in Upper Egypt. So this is basically before the pyramids. So this is the pyramids you're looking at 4,600 years ago. This is 5,300 years ago. So this is well before anything really. This is. So when we want to put this into perspective, the Bronze Age in Britain, if we want to talk about the Beaker period, when we got copper, that's 4,500 years ago. So this is 800 years before that still, right? But this is again in Egypt. And the one thing I would say before I read any of this, because is when you get sophisticated technology, right? It means to have developed that sophisticated technology, they must have been doing that for quite some time until we actually find the object. I think we all agree with that. It's like the Stonehenge thing, isn't it? Stonehenge just didn't turn up, right? There must be another Stonehenge somewhere, and they developed these things. So going back to this. So this changes things on Egyptian technology. Researchers have identified the object as the oldest known metal drill from Egypt. And when you think about that statement, right? Hang on a minute. Who is trying to come on again? Oh,
Hey.
right. Who?
Problem with my computer. So I'm on my laptop a minute.
So you're trying to come on again, are you?
Yeah, I'm trying to get my PC to work properly on you.
It's working.
There's no sound.
Well, we can bloody hear you, you bloody numpty.
Yeah, you can hear me on my laptop.
Hang on a minute, right? We shouldn't be hearing you at all. You should be listening to me.
Hang on, then. I'll get out of that one.
No, you don't have to. It's fine. Oh my
Right.
God! It's like running a school for numpties. This is right. Okay. Right. Anyway, we got that. So the piece dates. There we go. We got all that, and obviously a bow drill in action. Right. So a bow drill rather than this other drill that we're talking about today, the metal drill. Yeah. So that's illustrated in the New Kingdom tomb painting from Western Thebes. So when we talk about the New Kingdom, we're talking about 3,500 years ago. Well, this drill that we're talking about is 1,000. Let me get my maths on that. Is 500, 1,000 is 1,800 years earlier than this, which is a massive period of time, right? So archaeologists found the tool, a Badari, about a century ago. Records. So in other words, found in the 1920s.
Hang on, that's crap. I found some crap.
What?
The tool weighs 1.5 grams, the weight of a feather. So I think it must have been 1.5 kilograms, I guess.
No, no.
1.5 grams is nothing.
Yeah, but it's not going to be 1.5 kilograms. Do you realise how heavy that is? Bill, shut up. Let me read it. Right.
Okay.
Oh,
It's not going to be 1.5 grams.
I can tell it's going to be a bloody night like that in there. I haven't even gone anywhere. So I got problems from Richard. Henry's caused the cat amongst the pigeons. Bill's doing my bloody head in. Don't start off. Don't say anything. Records from 1920s describe a short copper awl, which is obviously, they may have thought it was for making holes in leather, with a strip of leather wrapped around the shaft. The note was brief, and the object drew little notice for decades. The tool measures 63 millimeters, which is 6 centimeters in length. Which I'm seeing. There's no way 6 centimeters of metal is 1.5 grams. I can tell you that now. So there's something wrong with that, right? So anyway, Bill, I'm agreeing with you. Now shut up. Recent work by a team of Newcastle University and Vienna brought the object back under study. There you go. Close inspection under magnification reveal a clear sign of rotary use. So when we think about the Antikythera mechanism, which was found in 1902, the island of off the coast of Antikythera, and that dates to, what is it, 2,200 years ago, right? So that's a technical piece of technology. This is far older than anything like that. Far, far older. I think this is fascinating. So the tip shows fine parallel lines. So obviously what we're talking about on some drill bits today, we do still have that on our drill bits. So that's great. So this is actually something quite modern. So the edges appear rounded from repeated motion. A slight bend near the working end matches stress from spinning against hard material, probably like granite. These traces differ from damage caused by simple pushing or piercing, which is not an awl. So small coils of dried leather still cling to the shaft. So in other words, that means that it was going at some kind of speed. So researchers link these fibers to a bow drill system. Nevertheless, maybe. So in such a device, a cord wraps around a drill shaft. A bow moves back and forth, spinning the drill quickly. Later Egyptian tombs show paintings. Well, when you talk about later, right, these are 1,800 years later, right, show workers using similar tools to bore holes in beads and wool. But something like this is far more sophisticated. So I think that's quite obvious. It really is. That does look... Bill, right, this is your little bit of homework, right? You've got to find more images of this, right? You've got to get straight to the end. You've got to tell us more about this next week, right? So that's obviously the mountain piece, isn't it? We've not got a section of that. Is that a flat mountain piece? So that'd be perfect in a drill because it would fit there.
Well, there's signs there of copper. Sorry to say. See the green there, the verdigris?
Bill, I'm not going to disagree with you. Of course, it looks like copper. So anyway, but we're talking about a composite material. So the Bandari drill from grade 3,932. I knew him well. It was Dave. The burial of an adult male. Objects from the cemetery show skilled production of beads, stone vessels, and wooden items. Many of these tasks required careful drilling. A rotary tool would have improved control and speed during such work. The find points to advanced technical knowledge in pre-dynastic communities. The point is, Bill, right? The point is, Bill, if they've got technology like this, right, which is a composite material, because you can get an idea, it's not just copper there, right? We'll just help you build a pyramid.
It would. That's the key. What was the composite material used in that? That would be a real breakthrough if you could find something. All
right then. All right, Bill. Right. Either that's your own work for next week, or by the end of this session, Henry will have probably looked it up and tell us exactly what the composite material is. That's what Henry does.
No, I'm leaving it alone now.
We could all take a trip over. We could all take a trip over to Egypt to investigate.
Yeah, and Carl can pay for it. And actually, 5-star hotels only.
He's gone pale. He's gone quiet.
I have gone pale. I've been well this week. It's made me even worse
business
now.
Class as well, I think. We only fly business class.
Anyway, thank you for that, Henry. That's good news.
Carl.
And Carl.
Carl.
Who's calling me now?
You hear me?
No, I don't want to.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Nobody else can.
What if they used it, you know, with a bow and everything?
Yeah,
Because people have used that for making fire, haven't they, with a piece of wood?
they have. They have. Yes.
So what if they used it, piece of copper, in a bow like that, would get pretty hot and burn a hole through leather.
But there's also something
But
else.
every now and again,
Yeah.
it jams in the leather and twists a little bit.
Yeah, this is, you know, all this because you used to work with cars and alternators and stuff. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, and belts and so on. So yeah, you are right.
And
But there is one.
leave a twist through it after
Yeah,
it's been used for a period of time,
yeah.
and then just chucked away and get a new piece of copper bar. And
But there is one thing you've missed. The level of heat that's being produced, right, against other metals could create other alloys, right? By fusion or by heat, right? So there's all these other things that can happen, right? So as you know, as we all know, drills can produce incredible heat, right? So these are all there. These are all really interesting things.
But if it's just copper,
yeah,
you know, copper's really soft, isn't it?
Yeah. As Bill's keeps saying, but
Depends on how it's, you know.
If you could alloy this and have some surface coverings, then as we know with modern tools today, they even coins we might have really soft metals and then we cover them with stronger metals and we get that with drill bits and all sorts of things that they actually cover them, but we'll just move on. Now, last night, I thought really that I was not going to get until 9 o'clock, 20 past 10, right? I thought, oh my God, this has gone over, right? So somehow tonight I've got to manage to get everything across that I wanted to get across, right? In an hour and a half, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to probably sort of soundbite lots more things. So we're going to crack on. In future, Henry, right? When you want to put a cat amongst the pigeons, right? Can you just send it to me first? Cheers.
Do you want the other stuff?
All right. Tell us what the other thing is now.
No, I'll leave it for another time. There's another hand grenade.
Yeah, well, the hand grenade. Do you want a hand grenade? I will. I will give you a hand grenade. Now, hang on a minute. Let me just find my blooming images. Right. Oh, right. My hand grenade. Right. Why am I looking at that? Oh God, what is going on? Right. What? Why have I got that? Hang on.
Another technology failure.
It is a technology failure because I can't find my images. Hang on. Right. Hang on. I got a total technology failure. Yeah. Hang on. Why have I got this? Can't see. What the hell's this? No, I don't want that. Hang on, there's something wrong. Right, go. I do have a technological thing a minute. Hang on, what is there? There. Want that off. Right, hang on a minute. Right, let's get that off.
What was the other thing?
Yeah, well, just you may as well tell us because I'm really struggling.
I forgot what it is at the moment. It was something quite. I think it was going to shape the whole world.
Oh, the most important find ever. Right, got it. Oh my God, I found it. Sorry. Right, here we go. Those are all the things I'm trying to go through tonight, which I'm not going to do. Right. So, right. I found a reference today, which I'm going to find it for next week, of an inscribed stone that was attributed to this guy found in Britain. Right. So why is there an inscribed stone in Britain? Right. Attributed to this guy if he never ever come to Britain. Right. So I have actually been doing research this week. And it's now turning out more and more that there was an invasion by Caligula of Britain, and it was completely dismissed and eroded from history, right? But before we do that, I've got to I've got to move away from Julius Caesar, right? Quite pronto, right? And I don't need to do the books of Julius Caesar, so I'll just do a bit of quicker but recap. Bill, what? Bill, there's Bill's wall, right? There's Bill's wall. Yeah, he went there. Bill's wall, in Exeter, and obviously Roman stuff. And this is the thing. It's this stuff in the deserts of Africa really got people moving last week, and it obviously interested the likes of Henry, who sent me some material. There was a couple of people on Tuesday, and we thought, right, we're really wanting to know more about the Roman provinces in Africa, right? So we started to see through aerial photography that I was being sent in the week that the area of the Garamantes people, we're now getting more and more evidence that there are more of these places there under the sand dunes, from looking at this last week. So there's lots of lost archaeology, and one of the things that I think about and very interested in is the invasion of Caligula of Britain, right? And it's looking more and more that there's something missing in the historical records. And why am I sort of thinking about Caligula and Julius Caesar at the same time? Because these two characters are really linked in how we look at their invasions of Britain in 55, 54 BC. And what about the invasion of 56 BC that I keep going on about? So we're going to mention a little bit about that, only passing, right? And one thing I'm going to just say quickly, right, because we'll be doing this next week and the week after to do with Caligula, is that why have we got lots of coin evidence in Britain associated with Caligula? Why is it here, right? And when we think about Julius Caesar, so Caligula, we've got AD 40 before he's assassinated in AD 41. We're going to give you more context of Caligula. This is looking at Julius Caesar going to 54 BC. So the evidence for Caligula is there's lots of coins being found in Britain, right? And the reason why Caligula coins are very important is something that I will tell you about in a few moments once I get my diary in front of me, right? So there's my diary. Excellent. Right, but I'll tell you about the significance of Caligula coins. Just something my missus is saying you've been waking up screaming Caligula's name, right? So it's not good. But I've got some really good stuff that I want to share with you. Now it's been decided, right? And obviously this is something else as well. People thinking, there's lots of exaggerations with Julius Caesar's story, right? Could Caligula have used the Julius Caesar 20 hectare site in Ebbsfleet? The answer is no, right? Because I've got something else to talk about next week. So again, looking at Julius Caesar, thinking about Julius Caesar backdrop, but again, this is the point I want to make now. The next point, right, is that they voted last night that we, as of in a few weeks, right, we're going to probably not talk about any writings about Roman Britain at all. Everyone last week said we actually just want to do the archaeology. Well, we prefer that you don't talk about Tacitus and Cassius Dio when most of this stuff is made up by them anyway. And this is probably where we're going to be going, right? So we're going to be looking at the archaeological evidence. So instead of saying right, Julius Caesar tells us we invaded, right? We're going to say this is a ditch that is dated roughly around the time that somebody invaded Britain, right? Happened to be the person that fits into that category of Julius Caesar. Archaeological evidence, right? And if we take away the historical nonsense about Caligula, it's more plausible to think about Caligula actually invading Britain, right? So let's think of it that way, right? So again, moving from this. So what I thought, right? What I thought to make things easier for me tonight is all of this stuff here, right? All of this stuff here is little book chapters and stuff from the mentions from Julius Caesar about his invasions of Britain, right? And I'm not going to go through these in massive detail, right? So in book 5, chapter 1, Julius Caesar, he's preparing this invasion. He's got 5 legions, chapter 8. Now, if without me saying any of this, right, there's something wrong about the way Julius Caesar's writing. So we will encapsulate why it's wrong, this stuff from Julius Caesar. So this is about the second invasion of Julius Caesar in 54 BC. Again, I'm not going to spend massive time on this tonight. It basically says, in the winter following Caesar's prepared a great number of ships than he had done before, and ordered those which were damaged in the former year to be repaired. Right? Okay, fair enough. And then it says Caesar landed in Britain with 5 legions. Remember, there's a few chapters missing here because he's writing about other things, right? It's not his biggest interest. Julius Caesar landed in Britain with 5 legions and 2,000 horse. The Britons drew up their forces on the higher ground with their cavalry and chariots. And I'm thinking, this sounds a little bit like somebody telling a little bit of a story, right? The Britons fight with chariots in the following manner. First, they drive about in all directions and throw their weapons and general disorder the ranks of the enemy by the very terror of their horses and the noise of their wheels. Is he actually talking about, what's he talking about? He's not actually talking about his men, right? He's talking about general disorder the ranks of the enemy, right? But is he talking about causing disorder in his own army? I don't think he is. I just think this is just like a little bit of sort of fiction that he's putting on here. This is what I feel, right? This is why sometimes looking at history is pointless, right? And this is why I want, when I'm looking at, I keep talking about this, so get on with it. So when I want to look at Boudica, right, I'm going to forget about Cassius Dio and Suetonius Paulinus and all these other people, right? I'm just going to do the archaeology. I'm going to let the archaeology speak because I'm an archaeologist. I'm not a frigging historian. I should be looking more at the archaeology. And again, banging my head against the wall and saying, that's exactly what I want to do. Do you know, years ago, I said to myself, do I want to look at history or do I want to look at archaeology? Unfortunately, I've done the both, right? But I think you can look at archaeology that tells a story that is more powerful than a history, right? Hence why we're looking at Caligula over the next 3 weeks, right? Again, this chapter 12, you know, when they have thrown the enemy into confusion, they leap from their chariots and fight on foot. Well, it doesn't happen to Julius Caesar's army because they remain intact. There's very few casualties, right? Did any of this stuff happen? So in other words, what we're going to do, we've already mentioned Cassivelanus in the past. We've already mentioned all that. We don't even know Cassivelanus was a real person, right? We know that he had to get to the River Thames, right? And all these other things. So do you know what? We're going to forget about all this. We're going to move on. And then finally, having received hostages and imposed a tribute, Julius Caesar led his army back to Gaul. The end. Job done. I'm happy with that. Right. Now, let's get back to the archaeology, right? You know, last week, right? By the way, this is so disorganized and all over the place tonight. It's great because I got some articles to look at before we do Caligula, right? So this is something else. I was watching that film, right? That series, with Anthony Hopkins, right? And it was out in 2024. It was about, right? It was about the reign of Vespasian. So Anthony Hopkins played Vespasian in the series on Amazon. And I can't remember the bloody name of it. I had it last night. I can't. Anyway, right. I was watching this and in the first episode, right, and I thought, right, they go into Africa, right? They go into Numidia, right? And the point is, right, one, this is absolute, total and utter Rolex, right? One, you're not going to have a city, right, alongside a sand dune that's about 100 meters tall, right? It's rubbish. It's absolute tosh. And when Hollywood portrays Africa as a barren desert like this, you start to think, why would there be anyone living there if it is a barren desert? Hence why Africa was more than likely totally not a barren desert. it had trees, it had oases, not Neil and Liam Gallagher. That's the band Oasis, but oasis is in the water everywhere. And rich fields and villas and all the rest of it. It did not look like this. I hate this portrayal of the past as being completely wrong, right? We're not going to do this yet, but this is my evidence for these coins are my evidence for Caligula's invasion of Britain, right? Which we're going to do next week, as much as we're going to do this week. But you know what? We're not doing that yet. We're going to do some articles of the week. I told you it was so all disorganized this week, which is, you wouldn't do these things if it wasn't disorganized. So there we go. And by the way, if you haven't got a copy of Romans in South Wales, by the way, Goff hasn't got a copy of Romans in South Wales. I've got to send him another 4 copies, right? We're going to be using my book, Romans in South Wales, as of next week, right? So make sure you've got it in front of you. If you haven't got a copy, right, I'll send you one, right? Goff has got 2 to send you, so that's fine. So, so basically, right, we're going to do this first, right? I thought this was fascinating, right? And do you know when we did the drill, Henry's drill? By the way, Henry, right, I love the articles you give us, Henry, right? Because somehow it seems to link in with what we're doing, because that drill, which we're saying is a drill found in Egypt, excavated in the 1920s, right? This body was excavated decades ago, right? But we're only starting to find out that this person, right, had a trepan skull. It's a Viking guy with a hole drilled into a skull. I love things like this, right? And the reason why I love things like this, it just brings archaeology alive. Now, actually, there's no writing. This is not history. This is archaeology, right? And there you go, the skull. Now, it's likely that the guy may have lived for decades, right? But he died. He was killed, right? Because some of his mates have got sword wounds, right? He was killed, right, alongside 9 of his mates. And he had trepanation. He was trepanned, right? And it's been healed. The bone's starting to grow back, right? Amazing. It's starting to grow back. So it's really interesting to think how much this hole in the guy's skull would have actually healed back, right? But I tell you, unfortunately, if you have another blow to the head, it would probably kill him, but that's not the point. So the 3 centimeter hole. No, the guy didn't live between AD 772 and that was, well, he wasn't basically over 100 years old, right? He was only in his 20s, right? But the date range, and actually that's absolute crap, right? It can't be AD 772. And the reason why it can't be AD 772, the Vikings weren't even over here then, right? Oh God, I wish these people would write these articles properly. Anyway, moving on. So the skeleton of a young man, it was in the news, right? AR is not to be mentioned, Henry, right? Because it might upset somebody, right? You can mention Bettany Hughes, that's fine. So the skeleton of this young guy, right? He was 6 foot 5 inches tall, right? Nearly 2 meters tall. He was massive, right? He towered above all of us. He was bonkers, right? But he had a trepan skull. Loving that. So the hole had been bored into his skull while he was alive. And he actually, there's signs that, as I say, there's signs that he may have lived for decades, right? It's a shame that he didn't survive, you know, because he'd been killed, right? And he ended up in this pit with 9 other men, right? Sweaty, you know, Vikings, right? Which is not a nice fate, is it? Anyway, so the bone expert, Dr. Beers, suspects he had suffered from gland tumors, basically in his head, right? So causing headaches that the trepanning may have been an attempt to alleviate. So there we go. And there it is. If the young man had a tumor on his pituitary gland, oh my God, I said it right. This could have caused an excess of growth, which might explain his height. There we go. He was massive, right? The thing is, right, I gotta be honest with you, right? Does that mean he was masterful in bed? You know what I mean? Anyway, so for context, the average male height of the time was about 5'6". Well, I'm 5'7". Right. My missus is 5 foot, and I got to put her on 2 books to kiss her, but that's something else. Anyway, trepan skulls have been found all over the world, including, there's the link, Rome. There you go. The practice was thought to relieve symptoms of conditions such as migraine, seizures, and psychological problems. People go into mental hospitals, which was still being done up until the 1960s. There you go. So the individual was between 17 and 24 years old at the time of his death, and had been flung face down, jumbled in with the other remains archaeologists found. I thought that was a great piece. Oh, by the way, yes. By the way, I wrote to somebody that used to work, but that's the Viking thing done, right? I wrote to my old mate Emma, right, working in the Carinian Museum, and the last time I met her, right, it was really weird. I went in there to do some study in the Carinian Museum, and on the way out, she said, "Oh, hiya, Carl. Don't you remember I used to work for you?" And I thought, "Oh my God, it's you, Emma." Right. Anyway, a few years later, she's now director of the museum. And I said, "Look, Emma, love," I said, "can you send me the press release that you sent out about the Orpheus mosaics?" And she said, "Yeah, I'll send it over to you." Right. She's invited me back, Bill. She said, "Bring some of your students with you, and I'll take you for a personal guided tour around the museum." I said, "I can't think of any, but I might take off, you know." So I might take Henry, and you're a troublemaker, Bill. I'm not taking you. Anyway.
Oh, Carl, come on.
All right, Bill, I'll take you. All right. But there's one condition if I take you, Bill.
I'll buy you a pasty.
Oh, that's it. You've done it. But you don't use that against me, because I'm doing you a favour and then you're doing me one, right? Good.
Okay.
Yeah, we only stay in a 5-star hotel, though.
And I'm not frigging paying for it, nor is she.
You are.
Anyway, hang on a minute. Are there any 5-star hotels in Gloucester?
It's for you to look up.
Cirencester.
Yeah, but it's still in Gloucestershire, isn't it? Yeah.
You didn't say that. You said Gloucester. That's a city.
Yeah.
Cirencester's in
Bill, you're being pedantic now. Shut up.
Okay.
So the British Museum fragments of this museum, which is the Orpheus mosaic, right, used to be on the outskirts of the city of Cirencester, right? But in 1812, the village of Withington had its mosaic whipped off and taken to the British Museum, right? This was in 1812. And did you know, this is a really interesting fact. It's not in here, but I was doing some research. The British Museum was actually constructed over 50 years before 1812. It's one of the oldest museums in the world, amazing enough. And I thought I'd mention that in there. Right. I think the British Museum was built in 1756. You could check that one, somewhere like that. Anyway, so basically these came from Cirencester, right? But they are now being loaned, probably if Emma's got anything to do with it, permanently to the museum in Cirencester. And this is part of the Orpheus project. That was a really interesting set of mosaics. So, and the other thing as well is it was noticed that they hadn't been put on display in the British Museum since they had been basically moved there, right? So the project Orpheus said, "Look, we want these things out on display, right? Over 200 years after they had been found, we want them in Cirencester." And they basically, the British Museum have said, "Well, you can have them on display, right?" So so that's basically what it is. So these are on display now, as of now, right? Just before we move on to something else, right? It's there's two points with this, right? 2 points with these mosaics, right? There we go. Doesn't that look absolutely gorgeous, right? Emma said, I know Emma, Bill, I know her. In my many presentations about Orpheus mosaics, because there are a number of them in Britain, but not this specific one near Cirencester, I often made mention of the importance of the number of mosaics of this theme that have been discovered in Britain. To have the Withington fragments on display here at the Carinian Museum has been on my wish list for a very long time. So they managed to get it back to the museum. So Richard Hobbs, curator of the Roman, British and late Roman collections at the British Museum, said the British Museum is delighted to help reunite the fragments of the mosaics for display at the Carinian Museum as part of our national loans programme. But we will not be letting the Welsh have their mould cake back because we don't like them. Perhaps surprisingly, very few mosaics from Roman Britain are available for public view in museums in Britain, and the vast majority of mosaics have either been lost, damaged beyond recovery, or still buried under the soil that they were originally found at. We therefore have to be grateful to our antiquarian ancestors for preserving these fragments for future generations. Dead right. We'll move on to something else now, but I've got 2 points to make. Right, two really interesting points to make is that when you go to Hereford Museum, look on the sides of the wall, because there are actually mosaics on the wall, right, that were found at the site of Kent Church, which is near Hereford. So they're actually on the wall. So not all mosaics in museums are displayed on the floor. They're usually displayed on the wall. And some of the first mosaics that I ever saw in my life were actually displayed on the wall in the British Museum, which I thought was really odd. And if we think about it, this is one for Gough. The Roman mosaics, which were discovered by John Story at the Roman villa, discovered in the 1870s, 1876, I think it was, at Llanmaes. They are still there under the mud. So there we go. Bill, you weren't there that day that we went to see the Roman mosaic at not Roman mosaic, the Roman villa at Lantwick Major, where we got chased out the field by a cow. And also there was a sheep caught in some barbed wire, so I released it. So when I told a local farmer, he said, "You had no right to release my sheep." And I said it'd been in the field for nearly 2 weeks, half dying. And he said that was my responsibility. Anyway, sod it. Anyway, Bill, you were there that day, were you?
I was there, yes. I've been with you to Llanmaes, yes, I have.
You were there when I handled that sheep.
I can't remember, Carl. The sheep.
That must have been another occasion.
It probably was, yeah. You must have gone back and done it when no one was looking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. You know, can I just say something, right, Bill, as you're on the line, right? And Bill, I want your actual honest appraisal, right, of what I'm about to say, right?
Yeah.
When Bill got involved, it used to be me, Bill, and Kathy, and maybe one or two other people, right? I used to say, right, next week we're going to go in this field and we're going to see this. I'm not going to do any research, and we're not going to do nothing, right? But we're going to look at what we're going to see, right? And we looked at the archaeological remains and we made this determination. We found this and we found that, right? And I felt that was a far better way of looking at archaeology without any knowledge of it than actually looking it up first. Bill, what do you say about what I've just said? Am I correct or wrong?
Right, absolutely. Don't be influenced by what other people say. There's nothing like being there to view the area and make up your own mind exactly what was going on. Be your own man, always, when you go into field archaeology. Look,
do you know what? Do you know what?
Think and make an opinion.
I agree. And Bill, influenced by what they said last night, it was an overpowering vote, right? There was 8 of us. No, I think there was 9 of us, including me, last night. Other than half of one, they all said we don't want the history anymore. We just want the archaeology. Is that something you want me to look more towards, just doing the archaeology?
Yeah, I mean, years ago you told me, Carl, put yourself in the position of someone there at the time, within the restrictions of the technology and everything else at the time, and make your own opinion. Pretend you were there. What would you do?
Yes.
And I've always done that, and you benefit far more from doing that, thinking of yourself, putting yourself in the feet of someone there at the time.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I do. Well, that's somebody else who agrees, so that's brilliant. So now this is back to this image. This is why. Hang on, Carl. You get all over the place tonight. Why are you? I'm not. There's somebody on a Tuesday, right, who like Bill has been influenced by by specific things that I've told you over the years. And she says, Carl, can you that cave of the swimmers, right, which dates back to 10,000 years ago, which is basically there on the border between Libya and southwestern Egypt, right? And it's the cave of the swimmers. There's a woman swimming there, right? You can't make this up, right? And when you go there today, it's barren, bleak Libyan desert. There's nothing there at all. End of story, right? So the archaeology itself, forget about any writings. The archaeology itself tells us by the way people are painting that there was once water in that part of Africa 10,000 years ago. I know that's not nowhere near our Roman world 2,000 years ago, but there is a point to be made here. It's not just about the idea of seeing things that haven't changed. Things have changed. Back to what Bill said, you've got to put yourself within the landscape of archaeology, right? And it was just that reminder of me, somebody saying, actually, Carl, you're right. Africa's changed a great deal over the years. And let's just see a little bit more of the archaeology proving your point. So I just thought I'd put that in there. So look at that. Again, the woman on the right, and it's probably best. There it is. You can that is somebody that is clearly swimming, right? And they're all swimming, but the lady on the right, it's clearly they're swimming. And obviously 10,000 years ago, you wouldn't have images of people swimming if there was nowhere to swim. And to be able to see the profile of somebody swimming, they needed to be in water, right? There's the point made. Anyway, moving on. Right. So this was the other thing, right? Now, I think this was Goff, actually. He said he sent me these two links. Look, Henry, it's not favoritism this week, right? I got to keep Goff happy now and again, and he sent me these two links, and I thought I'll do this. Now, this is really interesting find on the south coast. Yeah, so Bournemouth University, Tom Cousins, he's been doing nautical archaeology stuff for a while, but this is in the sand, right? So what they've got, they found these ribs. And I think it's the oh god, I think it might be the starboard side. Anyway, you'll soon work it out from the image. I can't exactly remember, but basically these timbers are actually associated with the ship in the brink, right, just off the coast there. So they're hoping that this was disconnected from the ship when it went down, and these managed to get onto dry land and under the sand, and then the ones that have already been recorded out in sea may actually link to this, so it's the same shipwreck. And the one thing about shipwrecks is that there's a lot of them around our coast. There's tens of thousands of shipwrecks around our coast. There really is. Along the South Wales coast, you could probably talk about 1,000 plus. There's loads of them, right? But the one thing about this is seeing this and thinking, wow, and I think I got the article coming up. I think this is only just been found again, right? So they knew there was something there about 2004, right? And this has just been found after a storm in sort of end of January, right? So there it is. So part of the historic shipwreck has been revealed on a beach in the wake of Storm Chandra. The exposed timbers were discovered at the National Trust-owned Studland Bay, Dorset. Do you know what? I really struggle with Dorset because I can't say it without using a Dorset accent. On the 28th of January, maritime archaeologists from Bournemouth University believe it forms a missing part of the Swash Channel wreck. Now, the Swash Channel wreck is the allocated name for a shipwreck, which they do think that we now know the name of it, right? Because usually shipwrecks have either two names. They've got a number or sort of a title that they've just given it, like the Swash Channel wreck, and then they've actually got the real name, right? So that's going to come up. That was first discovered in the 1990s out at sea, but the stuff that they've actually found on dry land is sort of they knew there was something there in 2004, but now they've actually found it, and they're going to preserve it all, right? So it's basically discovered in the 1990s in a key shipping approach to Pearl Harbor. So obviously they're dredging it and finding these things. The stuff on dry land now that they've just found, right, sort of end of January 28th, hope is probably linked to this ship, the ship which is known as the Fame from Hoorn, an armed Dutch merchant ship that ran aground and sank in 1631. There's actually a happy story about the shipwreck. Nobody dies. The section of ship thought to be part of the hull measures approximately 6 meters long and 2 meters wide. It's actually quite a small section because the ship was actually quite big. A large layer of planking is missing from the vessel's exterior, which indicates the remains have been buried in sand since the 1630s. Right. There it is. So yeah, whoever put this image together, it's not a small vessel, is it? Whoever put the image together, it's that red bit there. They've actually covered it with the name. But so the fragment that they've got is quite small in relation to the rest of the vessel, but it's quite significant. So they're hoping to raise the stuff, if it is the Fame from Hoorn, right, and bring it to the stuff that they've got, and that wouldn't it be good to have the part of a hull of a Dutch merchant vessel in British hands, on display? I think that would be really good because we usually obsess with something like the Mary Rose that went down in 1545, but something like this is really good. I think it is. So anyway, finally looking at that, Tracy Churcher, National Trust. I'm always astounded by the history we find at Studland Bay, but this has been a real treasure. So what I want to explain by that, having the name of a vessel, right, gives it more importance in archaeological circles. It's a bit like, oh, we found a body in a car park. Oh yeah, that's fair enough. We'll bury him. We found a body in a car park. It happens to be Richard III, right? So it makes it even more important. And this is why, we're thinking that it could be all raised and put together. So the wooden tree nails are still in place and holding after 400 years, nearly. What a testament to the craftsmanship at the time. Finally, a confirmation of the wreck's origins will come from the dendrochronology testing that will assess when and where the timbers used to build the ship were grown and whether they match those previously analysed from the Swash Channel wreck. So obviously, if it's totally different timbers than the Swash Channel wreck, which is our named Dutch vessel, if it all links, and then it's brilliant, right? So the team from Bournemouth University have applied to Historic England for a grant to excavate timbers on the presumption it is part of the protected wreck, and look at that. Doesn't that look great? So these are going to be now raised and protected, right? They're not going to be left in the sand because it's too obvious now. And so the frame, they look slightly eroded, but they're pretty excellent condition. They really, really are. And this I think is a really interesting point, right? And last night I went off on a little bit of a tangent on this, and I'll do it now. I'll just see if we got any more images. There we go. That's the stuff. That's the stuff that they've looked at. It's really well preserved out in the brink there. The Wash Channel wreck is really well preserved for that type of nautical archaeology where the it's been scoured, and they've been dredging. It's really well preserved. That you could think about anchors and stuff. But this little bit of information, the Swash Channel wreck is one of only 57 shipwrecks around the coast of England designated under the Protection of Wrecks Act 1973. 57 is not many considering there are thousands of them, right? But I'm going to explain that just briefly, right? When we look at the Scheduled Ancient Monuments Act, which has been updated so many times, I don't know which one I'm quoting anymore, but when we look at the Protected Scheduled Ancient Monuments Act involving Wales in particular, Cadw's policy is that every single site that's Paleolithic is Scheduled Ancient Monument, right? Then when we get to Mesolithic sites, most of them are protected, forever, right? Let's not go down the political angle, Carl. Just keep it professional. And then when we get to Neolithic sites, probably 80% of all Neolithic sites are protected, and then Bronze Age, probably 70, Iron Age, probably 50%. And then we get to the Roman period, not all Roman sites are protected. And then we get to the medieval period, even less medieval sites are protected, right? So what I mean by that is when they don't protect everything because there's not the resources to do so, right? So 57 ships are very special, the ones that are deemed nationally important, because not all ships are nationally important, because so that's why we've only got 57 protected at this minute, but that number will increase over the years. So firmly dated remains of vessels predating 1700s exceptionally rare. So it's really good. So we can't say for certain that these fragments come from that wreck, but it's an intriguing possibility. Protected wrecks have legal legislation, meaning that any disturbance or interference is only permitted under an official license. So in other words, if you take a piece of timber from a protected vessel, right? If you take a timber from the protected scheduled ancient monument, the Swash vessel, right, it's an imprisonable offence. Also, now this is really interesting, if the stuff on the beach belongs to the Swash Channel wreck, right, it immediately becomes a protected, is part of the wreck. It's part of the assemblage, right? So therefore, if anyone takes a bit of that timber, they will be in deep trouble. So so they've got to be protected from interference, and they've got to be lifted and moved for protection. So going back to that, looking at that, really interesting. And there it is, a 40-meter long vessel. I know that doesn't sound long because you've got aircraft carriers now. I think the Americans have got an aircraft carrier that's 1 kilometer long, right? But back then, 40 meters is not a small vessel, right? You can argue with me on that one, but they're still, you know, we're talking about the time of the Mayflower and all the rest of it. You know, we're talking, well, I know that's a few years off, but those were sizable for the time. You know, at 10 meters wide, that's quite sizable for the time, right? And riding 15 meters high from basically from the keel. So and would have been capable of carrying 40 guns. That's quite substantial, you know, 40 guns back then. You know, we're talking about 1831. You know, gun cannonry is not the best yet, right? But it will be. And we're not in the period of pirates yet. So we're talking about the period of pirates about 1720. So we've got about 100 years to go. But there are pirates in the Caribbean at that stage. And interesting enough, this is really interesting, Bill. The reason why this is really interesting is because it links to Port Eynon. Not actually, but the mention of salt, right? Port Eynon, the salt house at Port Eynon, which is still there, the remains of it. I've been there a few times. Salt was so valuable, right, that the Port Eynon salt house on the Gower had defended gun holes. It was a defended site to keep the salt safe, right? This is how valuable salt was in the late 1500s, 1600s, going into the 1700s. Really valuable, right? So you can imagine that this vessel would have had a home at defending against pirates in the Caribbean. So there we go. Records state that all 45 members of the crew abandoned the ship safely when it grounded, but the wreck was soon looted by people in the area. Right. Well, if it had gone off on me and Richard know this full well, don't we, Richard? If it had come down off the coast of Barry, right, there would be nothing left of the ship, let alone anything off it. They would take the lot, right? That's in South Wales, but obviously they left the timbers in this occasion because probably that landscape, the Cornwall, Devon, Dorset landscape, there's probably lots of shipwrecks, so they were a bit more picky than people from Barry. Bill, you don't have a good thing about Barry people. I'm just making it worse, to be honest with you.
Thanks very much.
Bill, when we have our next trip, right? Why don't you park your car in Barry? Right.
I'll take up the extra insurance, Carl. Okay.
I think you did, didn't you? Right. So anyway, ancient seafarers helped shape Arctic ecosystems. We're going to be really brief on this, and I think Goff's point was to basically make the point that people have been going to Greenland and Canada for a lot longer than we once thought. So it wasn't just the Vikings getting there. People have been going there for a long, long time. And again, I wasn't going to spend long on this piece, but I just wanted to put the text on there. So we get the Carry Islands, for example, nestled between the wild seas and maybe ice between Greenland and Canada, and the surrounding seas are perilous. So very difficult with modern boats. And people used to think, that's the point that Bill made earlier on. You've got to put yourself back in the day, not think about modern problems, right? But this is the point. So between that sort of sound of sea, it's not really a sound of sea, is it, between Greenland and Canada, but I'm using it in another context, an area of sea. But new archaeological evidence suggests ancient humans managed to sail to the islands too. So that they're using that landscape, they're navigating that landscape. So there we go. People have been going across those. It was 50 kilometers from I think from did it say it was 50 kilometers from crossing the 50 kilometers to and the shores of northwest Greenland. So you're going over in very relatively small vessels 4,500 years ago, right? And again, this is the point I think we were trying to make at the beginning with the drill, right? We don't really understand the history at all. We don't, and we don't understand archaeology. I should be saying we don't really understand the past as much as we should. When I make statements like, "Oh, surviving in Rome is probably 5% of the original Roman city of Rome," and you're thinking, "Hang on, you've got the Colosseum and you've got this and that," but no, it's only about between 5 and 10%. And then you're thinking, well, if we haven't got much of that surviving to tell us about Rome, right? Even when we look at Pompeii, there's only about 50% of Pompeii survived, even though we think it's all there, but it's not, right? It's between about, I don't know, 25 and 50% of Pompeii survived, no more than that, right? So when we're expected to read the past, we don't really think that people did these things, but traveling across bounds of water like that, archaeologists, have assumed that transportation was not possible, but now we're starting to think that movements of people, whether it's unfrozen or frozen, people are able to move within these dynamic Arctic ecosystems and to move around landscapes that we struggle to do so today 4,500 years ago. And they're doing more of this research. Don't assume things about the past. In the past, archaeologists had assumed humans made their way to the Arctic by following musk oxen and other onshore prey. Yeah, right. Okay. But though more recent evidence has suggested otherwise, it's been hard to dispel the old theories, particularly because remnants of boats and fishing supplies made from organic materials were largely missing from the archaeological record. Now we're starting to find that there's movement across that landscape. Now, I just showed you an image, Caligula, right? Now, if anyone asked you about Caligula, they would say he's a debauched madman that historians derided, right? But there's only two historians that really deride Caligula, and and people make films based on that derision, right? And unfortunately, Caligula is a little bit more archaeological. The Nemi boats, for example, the boats on Lake Diana, right? So, we're going to be looking at, say, for example, the archaeology of Caligula, what he achieved and what he did, right? We're going to be looking at the coin stuff, and we're going to be looking at this inscription that I've just come across today, related to Caligula's beloved dad, Germanicus, right, who was this great general. And Caligula had every right to be seen as a lunatic in history, but he shouldn't be seen as being this debauched madman. in films like Caligula. So what I think I'm going to do now, before we have a little break in about 6 minutes, I need to do a little bit of this because we're not going to get through it otherwise, and we're going to be a bit behind them from last night, right? So what we're going to do, I think I might do this little bit here, and then we're going to have a break. So guys, anyone who hasn't got a copy of my book, they need to let me know now, right? Because if you haven't, it's going to make things awkward for me. So say next week, I'm going to say, turn to page so-and-so to look, for example, at coins, right? And for example, this would be useful today. So when we're talking about sesterces, what exactly is a sesterces? When we're talking about a denarius, what is a denarius, right? What is a copper? What is a kappa? What is a quadrans, right? What is a nimim? And all these different things, right? So if you've got that in your head, you know. So anyway, right, one key thing tonight to remember is a silver denarii was an average Roman legary's daily pay, right? Park that in your head, forget it, and then there's a meaning behind that coming up, right? So now this is actually taken from a publication that I managed to pick up. Oh, Richard will remember there used to be a bookshop in Barry called Greeners, and the guy was a bit strange in there, right? And I used to go into Greeners in the early 80s, right? And I used to buy books. And one book I bought was a book called The Emperors of Rome and Byzantium, which I bought for about 7 or 8 quid. It's now worth 250 quid. So I've told Michelle, if anything happens to me, you sell the book and that'll pay for my funeral. Well, I'm not having the normal funeral anyway. Anyway, move on. Right. So basically, you can see in this coin here, SC, right? We'll discuss what SC means after the break, right? But Caius Caesar became Caius Caesar Germanicus, right? He hated being called Caligula. He hated it, right? Caligula, a nickname meaning little boot given him in childhood by his father's soldiers. Instead of being in the annals called Caius, right? They called him Caligula. It's almost as if even in death, they're ridiculing the guy, right? It's a shame, really. He's treated the same as Hatshepsut, and he's treated the same as Akhenaten, right? And I'm going to make a bold statement. This guy achieved more building-wise than Julius Caesar did. He had more built in such a short lifetime than Julius Caesar did. So physically, there's more to put Caligula on the map than Julius Caesar. But I'd be burnt at the stake for saying that to lots of Roman experts. So he was born on 31st of August. He went to battle with his dad. He was aware of warfare from a very early age, right? But his dad was murdered. Germanicus his dad may have become a Roman emperor, right? A military Roman emperor, like Julius Caesar, right? Like Augustus, military geniuses, right? However, his father Germanicus was murdered on the orders of Emperor Tiberius, right, in year AD 19. That lived with Caligula until the moment he was assassinated. Right, very important that, and very important to the story for this week, next week, and a week after. Right, so 16th of March, take this down, nice. This is when he became the man himself of Rome in AD 37. He was the great nephew of the man above him, Tiberius. Right, he was the great grandson of Augustus. So in other words, he was linked to the first two emperors. Now he was the third Roman emperor, right? He was assassinated, right? And it's not on this bit because I don't know why it copied out. It's just on the chart there, right? He was, hang on, where are we? He was assassinated on the 24th of January, AD 41, right? By a tribune at the Palatine Games in Rome. So in other words, he was out there, in the games, opening the games, and he was assassinated. People say he was extremely unpopular. He was hated, right? Well, he couldn't have been that hated if he went to the bloody games. But he was given the damnatio. So in other words, his name was scrubbed from coins. His name was filed off monuments. Anything that he is meant to have been connected with was destroyed. His family was wiped out, everything. And one little thing there is, can you see that there? The C? That means Caius. Caius, Caesar, Augustus, Germanicus. Later on, the C was filed off the coins, right? So in other words, it's very difficult to get a coin with a C on it. And people who are found with Caligula's coins would be punished. So they were melted down, they were discarded, they were just got rid of, right? But there are quite a number found in Britain. Just moving on just a little bit here. He reigned for 3 years, 10 months, and 8 days. He was 28 when he was murdered, right? Assassinated, whatever. His wife was Caesonia, as we know. His dad was Germanicus, AD 19. Mother Agrippina Senior. Very interesting, because you've got Agrippina Junior, who comes into her own. So then you've got Drusilla, Julia Livilla, basically sisters, brothers Nero Caesar, Drusus Caesar. Now, brothers Nero and Drusus, right, were probably murdered on the orders of Tiberius. So by the time Caligula got into power, his family had been basically wiped out. His mother was dead in AD 33. So Drusilla, right? Not really sure what happened to his sister Drusilla, but that would have been in his reign. But very bad times for this man. Very, very bad times. And after the break, if we've got time, we will look at that map. Right. So again, I'll just say one thing. And I'll just do this quickly because we don't really need to spend any time on this. It's in the history, right? Last night I spent about 10 minutes talking about the invasion of 56 BC. And so you've got the Julius Caesar invasion of 56 BC, or wasn't it? And it was probably not at all. There's probably no real substance into the invasion in 56 BC. It was just Julius Caesar talking about invading. It never happened, and a few tributes went back and forth, and the year later in 55 BC invaded. So that basically explains that. Now, I'm going to find out if Richard's got anything to say. And by the way, Richard hasn't been interfering with me tonight. Richard, you've been really good. You haven't interfered with the lecture at all, and we don't. You're great. It's fine, Richard. So you've repaired it. So anything you want to say, love?
No, nothing. Very interesting.
Good. Right, Henry.
Greetings.
If you're going to go down in big style, Henry, disturb this lecture more and give us some more of your report.
I've sent you some things.
Oh, shit. Well, okay.
No, it won't upset you. It's all right. You're safe. And William's showing you a coin. I think he made it yesterday.
Oh, my God, look at that.
That says, let me tell you what it says. Imperator Hadrianus Caesar.
I was just about to identify that myself.
I bought it in York some years back. I got 2 more as well from 2 different emperors. I think I paid about 50 quid for them, I think.
Oh, well, what it is to have money, love.
Yeah. Do you want to see the others?
Oh, yeah, go on, show the others, love. Go
Right.
on.
I'll show off now. This one is Antoninus Pius. He was the one before Marcus.
Yes, he was. Marcus Aurelius, yeah. What's happened now? Oi, Bill! Are you still there, Richard?
Internet's broken.
Well, mine's working.
He's frozen.
Oh, bloody hell, he's frozen. Bill! Oh, fiddlesticks. I tell you what, we'll have a look at his etchings after the break, right? and we'll have a break now for 10 minutes. And it's now, I don't know what time it is. It's 8:24. We'll have a well, okay. We won't have exactly 10 minutes, but we'll have a little enough. We'll be back after that past. See you in a minute, guys.
Okay, bye.
What happened there?
I decided we'll go to a break, right, and then we'll
What happened there, Carl? I was cut off then totally. I went back to my desktop then.
don't worry. What we're gonna do after the break, right? We'll have a look at your coins then, okay, Bill?
Okay.
Okay.
Ready? Right. There's Adrian. We on a break now, eh?
Yeah.
Okay. See you shortly.
See you shortly. Thanks, Bill. Well, is it true that you're going to start supporting the English rugby team because Wales will never win again?
No, I'm not, Carl. That's this one is Antonina's Pious. No, it's not.
Love it, love it.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's supposed to be of fine quality.
Good. How much? How much that must have been to buy that now would be about £100.
Yeah, actually, I think that's what I paid for it.
Oh right, okay.
100. I'll tell you now. It's on you. What did I pay for it? Yeah.
Yeah, that was
But you're holding something now which is nearly 2,000 years old. That's
exactly.
Oh wow.
That's why I say when I'm holding Michelle's breasts, they're nearly 2,000 years old. You know.
I'll tell her when I see her. Right.
So
Put these away
okay.
now.
Appreciate that, Bill. Right, guys, the next bit now. Okay. Richards is going to say he wants to be finished by 9. Well, yeah, right. All right then. We'll see. Right, let's just go to it. So, right. Oh God, I'm lost with the Woolwich a minute. Do you know what? I always say I'm with the Woolwich. It'd be a bit stupid, really, when the Woolwich haven't been going for years, have they? Now,
Where are
now.
we? Oh, back in Kent.
Yes, we're back in Kent now. I got to remember what I was doing, right? So I've got to explain something first before we look at the portable antiquities coin record, right? So last night I sort of did a lot more detail I'm going to do now because I just want to give the message, right? So I showed you earlier on that there's supposed to be a C before this C, but it's been chiseled off, right? So this was something known as the damnatio. The damnatio is basically that there are Roman emperors or rich Roman officials or historians that are to be erased from history, right? To be got rid of, right? In a modern context, in a modern context, you could basically talk about, the Nazi Party and Adolf Hitler in Germany, right? You could talk about the likes of Jimmy Savile, right? We erase these things from history for fairly good reasons, right? But when you talk about Roman emperors, right, or back in the day, the damnatio, they were part of the society of Rome, right? And it was almost as if they were planning to get rid of Caligula from day one, right? And Caligula was not going to win, whatever he was, whether he was an absolute nut job, whether he was a sensible man, nobody wanted him around, right? Because he had the potential to be one of the most important, one of the most influential Roman emperors in history, but he wasn't allowed to be that way, right? So when we for example look at other coins, for example gold coins, we see that this coin itself, somebody's put a chisel through his head. This is basically saying, look, I don't respect the guy, right? I don't want this coin in my collection. And the point is that you do not have these coins with you, right? You must not have these coins with you. You must erase them, right? So by chiseling off the C, it's thought people could continue using these coins, right? And they did, but only for a short period of time. As soon as these were gathered together, they were just melted down. Now, when I was talking about this last week, Will, that I occasionally send you emails from with some of the research he's done from a Tuesday, right? He basically went off and he said, right, have we got any coins of the likes of Caligula that actually show any triremes on them, right? Do we actually, what do we see on the backs of some of these coins? There's two things that we see on the backs of these coins. It's members of his family, which we'll see in the stuff that's been found in Britain. He loved his family to death, actually. He loved his dad, he loved his mother, you know, he loved his family, right? But he was seen as an absolute nut job. Now, one thing about Will's search for the likes of coins with triremes on, right, to basically indicate, or a lighthouse, right? You know, why did he build a lighthouse? You know, what's that got to do with anything? So the likes of his victories, military victories, are erased from history, which is something that is remarkable, right? So Germanicus, right? Germanicus's dad was a military genius, right? But Caligula died at the age of 28. So he had lots of years to go, but he wasn't allowed to be anything more. So we're showing this map. So when we look at coins, we know coins have been found of Caligula's in West Sussex, Hampshire. Nothing until next week in Kent. Now this is a point, right? Now, where's my diary again? I had a minute ago, right? My diary is here, right? I wrote something in my diary, right? So today we're going to look at the portable antiquity coins, which and the portable antiquity coins themselves have been mainly found by metal detector enthusiasts, but they have not been found, as far as I'm aware, in Kent. The record only takes us to Hampshire, West Sussex, Nottinghamshire, other parts of the country, right? But not Kent. There have been coins found in Kent, but that's what we're going to look at next week. Now, there's a pattern arising, right? And I'll tell you why this is very important this week. But before we do any more, I got to tell you this. So the damnatio memoriae, Latin for condemnation of memory, right, is a Roman practice of erasing a disgraced person, anybody, who was in public high life. The memory was to be removed, destroying statues, removing names from inscriptions, and banning portraits to condemn them to oblivion. So we see this massively in regards to Caracalla and his brother Geta. Septimus Severus on his death, and handing Caracalla the keys to Rome in 212 at York, for example. Caracalla only lived till he didn't live many years, actually. That was until 217. So Caracalla did this to his own brother, right? He really did. So the damnatio memoriae. So we see this happening to Caligula decades earlier, right? In AD 41, right after he was assassinated on the 24th of January, AD 41. And this is basically talking about Caracalla again and the damnatio, where you basically the Egyptians did a lot of this, to be honest with you. They did this with Hatshepsut. They just did this with Akhenaten, lots of unpopular pharaohs, but the Romans did this as well. So I tell you what, doesn't he look like a cheeky little bastard, Caracalla, right? But this is obviously out of the range of what we're doing with Caligula, which is obviously 150 years before. But this is the point being made with the excesses erasing people, right? You not only erase their name, you erase their image, there are images erased from official portraiture in regards to tombs and all sorts of things. So I just want to make a point before I discuss this and this. Now, I was, to be honest with you, when I say I've been waking up in the middle of the night screaming Caligula's name, right? It's not far off. I've been talking to Michelle about Caligula, and it's like, oh, can you talk about somebody else? You know what women are like, Bill. But the fact of the matter is, I've become really interested in Caligula. Not to the extent that it's been an obsession, because there are lots to do. But I thought how to understand Caligula is to look at coins of Caligula found in Britain, right? And I was driving to South Wales last Thursday to a hospital appointment, and I had nothing on my mind other than Caligula. I actually phoned a coin expert as well, and a coin expert is a guy by the name of, got his details here. Where are they? There it is. Guy by the name of Michael Trenery. Bill, I used to buy coins off Michael Trenery in the 1980s, right? And obviously, wonderful Goff knows this. There was two people in my Lancet Major class who used to buy Roman coins off me. So I used to get them from Michael, right? So Michael, I phoned Michael and I said, look, Michael, do you have any coins of Caligula? And he said, coins of Caligula are excessively rare, right? They're very rare, right? And that takes us back to the point that I need to get into, right? So the point that we're going to get into is back to here, right? Portable antiquity scheme, and the point I was trying to make is this. I thought, right, evidence of coins which have been worn in Britain, just think about Britain only, indicate that they had come over in the reign of Caligula, right? Coins were not brought over by anybody, right? Or I can't say by anybody, but it's very unlikely that any coins were brought over after the reign of Caligula, right? Because he just was so unpopular, you wouldn't be seen dead with one of Caligula's coins in your pockets. End of. If you were seen with a coin of Caligula in your pocket, you were a supporter of Caligula, and you probably led you to be executed, right? So you got rid of them, right? So what the F you whatever Caligula coins doing in Britain if Caligula had never invaded? Do you see the point? Already, I see the point. I'll make this next week. Right. So evidence of coins worn indicated they had come over in Caligula's reign, which was a short period of time from AD 37 to AD 41, and the day of his assassination. So, and if they're worn, it means that they were in circulation in parts of Britain, right, which were not under any kind of Roman control for quite some time. And then they ended up in the ground, right, like this example. Now, the other point, the other side of the coin, literally, is that when you find coins buried in mint condition, like the Antonius Pius coin that Bill showed us earlier on, when you find buried coins in mint condition, they haven't been circulated. And also proven that they'd come over in the reign of Caligula, right? And they'd been promptly buried and got rid of, right? So that's really interesting. So this coin's from Northamptonshire. It's a little bit far away from the coast, don't you think? Right. So you know, it's it's a little bit far from the coast, right? Beating heart of Britain, right? It's from Northamptonshire. It's very worn, and there you go. There's a hole which has been drilled through it. Now that's really interesting, right? Because you find this with some Roman coins where there's a hole placed through it, right, as a lucky charm, associated with Caligula, if he was such a unpopular Roman emperor. Move on to the next coin, right? This coin itself is found in Suffolk. Hang on a minute, that's north of the Thames. That's over there on the right with the bit that sticks out in East Anglia. What the hell is a Roman coin doing in Suffolk, right? This is probably an early Caligula coin, right? But it's silver, right? And if you look at this coin, it may look a little bit worn, but this is actually two sides of the coin. So on the reverse side is Augustus, and on the obverse, which is the front of the coin, is Caligula. Now, this is a denarius. right? This is the type of coin that would be used to pay a Roman legionary. And how the hell has this ended up in Suffolk, right? And how is this so mint, right? Moving on to the other coin. This is a really interesting one. This is found in West Sussex. Now, this could date from any period in Caligula's reign, right? Which again is a very short period of time. So this is found in West Sussex again, on the south coast. Not again on the south coast. It's the first one from the south coast, West Sussex. And interestingly enough, it's very, very worn. Now this is so worn, right? It starts to make you think that this was in circulation for quite some time. That if this was brought over, and obviously not by Caligula's army or anything, because nobody's talking about that in AD 37, but it's probably coming over in AD 37. It's circulated, it's done the rounds amongst local people, and it's eventually ended up in the ground. You can't even see if it's a coin of Caligula, so nobody really cares, right? So that's that one. Hampshire, that's also on the south coast, right? We're leading somewhere with this, guys. If there was any landing from Caligula, it may not have been in Kent, but we're going to go on to that next week. So this is Hampshire. This is a coin from Hampshire, and there's the specific SC on it, right? Now the coins with SC were issued by the Senate, right? Not directly by Caligula, right? Now it's very likely that Caligula was approved by the Senate initially. They liked the guy because they didn't like Tiberius, but they got rid of him. Now, what do we know about this coin briefly and quickly is, again, Hampshire. It's a fairly early coin, right? And it's honouring Nero and Drusus, the sons of Germanicus, the brothers of Caligula. Caligula issued a coin dedicated to his two brothers. So, anyone talking about foul play with his two brothers has got to have that wrong, because Caligula's issued coins to Nero and Drusus after they've died, and they're also issued by the Senate. And this is a coin found here. Now the SC, there it is. The SC Roman coin stands for the Senatus Consulto, which is by the decree of the Senate, which are coins issued by the Senate for the standing Roman emperor, and they've ended up in Britain. Usually the gold and silver issued by the emperor, and the lower coins like the sesterces, like the eas, like the follis, for example, they're issued by the Senate rather than the emperor, who's got more control of the gold, right? So again, I've shown you all this. I've made my point with all of that. There we go. Sesterces, value of sesterces on there is basically 4 copper asses. Worth 4 copper asses. So basically, you probably got 4 loaves of bread for a sesterces, right? Remember, a silver denarii is a day's wages. So if you want to equate to a day's wages today, okay, 100 quid, right? Which is probably not good, but that's probably what a soldier gets today anyway. So a grunt. So that makes sense. So denarius, there we go. So we've done all that. Again, looking at this so far, we got coins in Hampshire, West Sussex, Northamptonshire. There you go. So, and obviously the Suffolk stuff and Essex is over on the right there, so it's slightly off the board. So this coin itself is from Norfolk, again off the board, right? Now this is a very interesting coin, right? A denarius of Gaius Caligula, very, very interesting. And note the date. This was produced in AD 40. Very interesting, that date. There's another one of these coming up as well. That was found in Norfolk. This is exactly the coinage that would have been issued to the troops of Caligula if they had been here in the first place. And I said to everybody last night, I said, don't go away from me saying the stuff about Caligula and believing every single word of it, right? But do you believe the words of historians who wrote about Caligula 180 years later, which I'll do just before we end tonight, right? Okay, I'm going to do that. I've got to. So this is a denarius, again, AD 40. At the time, if there was an invasion of Britain by Caligula, this is the time it would have taken place. And these are the coins that would have been used which would have been issued to the troops. Again, Caligula on the obverse, and the reverse side is I think the reverse side is probably it's not actually saying, it might probably be of Germanicus, his dad, I don't know. So again, this is another one, right? This is found in East Riding, Yorkshire. This is a denarius again. This is an early denarius. So what the hell is this doing in a country? Uh, um, this is a guy who's such a lunatic, right? He issues coins in respect of his family members. What I'm trying to say, he's not a lunatic, right? He's respecting people who have gone before him. That's not the signs of a despot. It's really not. A despot, nothing gone before, right? We see this with, for example, if we want to look at a despot with the Camel Rouge, day one, I'm the only one, Pol Pot. When we look at it's day one, and we look at the Third Reich after the coming to power of of the Nazis in 1933. By 1935, we've got year one. Nothing before. It's important. Blah blah blah. This guy isn't like that. He's not like that. He's somebody very different. And again, this coin itself is a very poorly drawn out coin. Again, it's a copper alloy coin, SC, issued by the Senate, another coin. And this one is found in Nottinghamshire, in the beating heart of Britain. How the hell does it ended up there when these were such unpopular coins in circulation? Again, this is another denarius found in Norfolk, right, from AD 40 again. What's going on? What is going on with these coins? What is happening? Right. Again, a very interesting coin that it's associated with the Senate. We've got, there you go, Caligula. This is AD 40, found in Norfolk. This is again is found in Nottinghamshire, a very, very worn coin. Could be actually Augustus, but it's probably Caligula. Very worn again. And this one is found in Wiltshire. This is a denarius again. Where this is more likely an early denarius from about AD 38, but this is in fairly good condition, and I couldn't get the condition of this. So we've got a plethora of coins spread all over the place, right? It makes no sense at all. Makes no sense at all to the history. Hampshire coin, very, very worn. Caligula, any time between 37 and 41. Now, this is interesting, even more interesting. This is a coin that was issued in Greece, right, for Caligula, for Gaius, anytime between AD 37 and AD 41, found in Buckinghamshire, of all places, right? This is very interesting, more than most of the other coins. This is in the heart of Britain, right? How it managed to get to Buckinghamshire. This is more likely to have been brought over by somebody who was of military intent, may have been paid this when he was in service in Greece. Don't know, right? But what the hell is this doing over here? What are any of these coins doing in Britain, right? The point again, making the point again, denarius, there you go. This is from Norfolk. Another one from Norfolk, a denarius, again, Roman daily wage. These coins were not brought over after AD 41. And the invasion of Claudius was in AD 43. So none of these would have been brought over by the troops. None of his troops would have been paid any of this money with the head of Caligula on it. It was illegal, right? So how are these over here? Trading coins, maybe, but there's lots of ideas for these. And just this one again. This is found in Shropshire, really far north. Yeah, there we go. So this is again circulated all the way to Shropshire. Bit of a grotty coin in a way, but this has got the head of Augustus on the right, and the reverse, and Caligula on the left. And again, this coin's in Hampshire. Again, we're nearly at the end of this. Hampshire, again, another worn down coin. Now, these coins themselves are associated with being reported to the Portable Antiquity Scheme by metal detector enthusiasts, found all over the place. Example from Shropshire again. There it is, really good. There's example of Augustus on the right, and Caligula on the left, Gaius. There's one thing, lots of these coins are really similar. They're really similar issued coins, right? And what usually happened is when you're paying Roman legionaries, you would issue them with an issue of coins that had just been minted, right? You didn't pay them for, well, I'll give them a shekel a year and a shekel a year, this, right? They'd have basically they would have been minted in Lyon in France. They would have been placed into a chest, and then the Roman soldiers would have been given their week's wages, right? They would have all been similar coins. This is what the coins tell us. They're all similar. The denarius is a similar, they're again, we've seen this design a few times tonight, right? It's spread all over Britain, right? And again, another one there that is probably from Gaius, right? So what I'm gonna do to end here is I want us to keep the image of Caligula. I'm gonna go onto my device and I'm gonna tell you, and I know some of you are gonna say it's 9 o'clock now. If you give me 5 o'clock, 5 minutes, I will manage to have given you as well, not as much as we did last night, because we did a lot longer last night, but it will give you the content that I want everybody to have. So just quickly, right? Just really quickly. So surviving contemporary writers who wrote about Caligula. Now, this is interesting. We'll just do a quick thing. Philo of Alexandria, right? Egypt. He died by AD 50. He lived in the lifetime. This Philo was 70, so when he died, he wrote in the lifetime of Caligula. He may have known Caligula, right? And he wrote basically at the time Caligula died in AD 41. He tells us about Caligula in an embassy writing letter. There's basically he writes about Caligula and what's going on in Alexandria and the Jewish revolt in Caligula's imperialship in AD 38. We'll come back to Philo, but he wasn't talking about sort of he wasn't massively critical of Caligula. He wasn't calling Caligula a nut job. He was saying, obviously, Caligula, he's interested a bit in cults and stuff. But then again, Constantine the Great was interested in a cult called Christianity on his deathbed in AD 337, but nobody talks about that. Now, Seneca the Younger, who dies in AD 65, right? He's nearly 70 years old when he dies, right? Seneca the Younger. Seneca is a contemporary who was more likely to have known Caligula. He did. He was critical of Caligula. He called him a tyrant. He was insulting of Caligula, right? He wrote a philosophical exemplar of Caligula. And he basically said Caligula was violent. He was humiliating, but he wrote it in a stoic praise or unpraise, a corrupting work about Caligula. He was critical of Caligula, right? Doesn't mean to say that anything he said was right or wrong. However, this is key. Before we talk about Suetonius and Cassius Dio, who absolutely slagged off Caligula, these next people are important, right? And I'll just do this briefly. These are all writing contemporaneously with Caligula. A guy by the name of Marcus Rufus. The chapter of the history of the emperors about Caligula had been removed. The chapter by Servilius Nonianus, who wrote about Caligula and all the other emperors, his references to Caligula were removed. Fabius Rusticus, a historian, his references to Caligula were erased. Caligula's own sister, her diary about Caligula, Agrippina the Younger, were erased. Aufidius Bassus, a historian, what he wrote about Caligula in his works, guess what? Were erased. So there are 5 sources that could have told us about Caligula. What they told us about Caligula was written out of history. The 2 people that bastardized Caligula and put Caligula under a bus in works like Caligula, the film, that really deride Caligula. Suetonius writes 80 years after the death of Caligula. 80 years, and Suetonius tells us Caligula marched troops to the ocean, drew them up in battle formation, ordered the collection of seashells, spoils of the ocean, and returned to Rome claiming victory. How can you believe a writer like Suetonius, who wrote 80 years after the death of Caligula, but everyone believes the work of Suetonius? Cassius Dio writes 180 years after the death of Caligula, probably using the work of Suetonius. He writes about Caligula assembling troops on the Channel, built a lighthouse. Hang on a minute. Why did Caligula build a lighthouse? But then he says, Cassius Dio says, oh, he ordered soldiers to collect shells, and he didn't record a crossing of Britain. Now, all of this is really important stuff. What I'm trying to get to is did Caligula invade Britain? That's what we're going to come on to next week in more detail. But I'm going to kick myself in the ghoulies a moment, right? And the reason why I'm going to kick myself in the ghoulies, I'm trying to be unbiased. Another writer called Josephus, who writes in AD 75, just a few years after Caligula, he doesn't mention Caligula's invasion of Britain. He's critical of Caligula, but he doesn't mention Caligula's invasion of Britain. We've already mentioned Seneca the Younger. He does not mention any invasion of Britain, right? Who was a contemporary of the likes of Caligula. Philo of Alexandria, that we've also already mentioned, who was a contemporary who knew Caligula, right? Who wrote about Caligula within days of Caligula's assassination, right? Philo of Alexandria does not mention any invasion of Britain in no way, shape, or form. The only people who write about Caligula invading Britain are Suetonius and Cassius Dio. They ridicule Caligula. So grounds used by historians to attack the idea of an invasion. We've nearly finished, folks. There are no temporary testimonies. Forget about Suetonius. They were not contemporary with Caligula, right? Philo, Seneca, Josephus, there was no military dispatch about an invasion of Britain, right? So what does Suetonius know? What does Cassius Dio know to criticize an invasion of Britain that didn't take place? Why did they even need to mention it? However, people are mocking Caligula. The archaeological evidence doesn't tell us of any forts in Kent built by Caligula. But then again, we've got no stone forts built by Julius Caesar either. We've got nothing in the archaeological horizons of an invasion by Caligula in anywhere in southern England, unless I go a bit further next week, which I will. There's no weapons associated with Caligula in southern England, but they get mixed up with Claudius. There's no narrative at the time, right? So nobody at the time were basically saying he was a failed conqueror. Nobody mentioned at the time Caligula was a failed conqueror, right? Nobody criticized his military capacity at all at the time of this supposed invasion of Britain. Nobody contemporary said he didn't even mention Britain involving Caligula. But why have we got those 5 histories deleted from Caligula's lifetime? However, finally, there's something that comes out the darkness, folks. Think about this for next week. Adminius, son of Conobolinus. Adminius was a native Briton who had become Romanized, who led a Roman province in Britain at the time of AD 40, and he was expelled from Britain by the Britons. And he went to the feet of Caligula to ask for help to invade Britain, to reinstate him as the leader of Britain, right? Adminius. Now, Suetonius makes a mistake, which really helps us. We haven't discussed all of Suetonius's works, but in criticizing Britain, in criticizing Caligula and Caligula not invading, he actually collects shells on the beach of northern France. Suetonius says he makes a mistake. Says Caligula treated Britain as if the whole island had submitted to Roman rule. Why would Britain have submitted to Roman rule if there was no invasion? What did happen to Adminius? The facts are is there was a very large concentration of troops on the Channel coast And that's mentioned by Cassius Dio. This guy's also attacking Caligula. Nearly done. And the shells, I believe that Caligula's troops managed to get to Britain. There was nothing for them to conquer. And they filled their helmets with shells to prove that they'd been to Britain. They went back on their boats and went over back to France. Exactly, Julius Caesar did that. There's a writer called Steelman that says Caligula initiated real invasion preparations and produced at least one Britain-facing politician known as Adminius, and the rest was later rewritten as farce. So when we think about all of this, when we really get to the nitty gritty, right? When we want to make this clean, Caligula concentrates forces in northern France, builds fortifications, builds harbours, builds lighthouses for the invasion of Britain. Caligula, Adminius falls at the feet of Caligula and says, "Help me in Britain." There may have been no mass crossing of Britain due to weather, logistics, and recalculation, but it doesn't mean to say that there was an invasion. The spoils of the sea, what does that mean? Seashells. Now, at the end now, why Claudius AD 43 needed Caligula to fail? Core idea: Claudius' invasion is one of the defining, legitimizing acts of Claudius's reign. So later tradition has intensified to shape the prelude. Claudius's annexation looks more grand strategy if it's framed as the completion of unfinished work. And modern work argues invasion logistics likely required years of preparation, not something improvised in AD 43. If Caligula had already assembled forces and focused attention on Britain, it becomes very easy for later authors to cast it as Caligula chaotic, ridiculous prelude, and Claudius competent finisher who achieves what the madman could not. Meanwhile, the Adminius episode, this leader of Britain, gives a perfect bridge event. Britain becomes a live issue before AD 43 tensions rise and Claudius later moves to invading Britain. The main grounds used to attack an actual invasion, only later hostile writers like Suetonius and Cassius Dio actually mention the invasion. At the time, there's near contemporary silence about Caligula and Britain. 3. No unambiguous archaeological AD 40 invasion horizon. 4. No clear Roman-style outcome markers. But then again, we don't get that with Julius Caesar other than Ebb's fleet. 5. The shells episode reads like satire. What does that exactly mean? And on that's where we'll finish today. Next week, we try to get the nuts and bolts of Caligula, along with lots of other things. And more archaeology, by the way. So, any questions, folks? Bill, anything you want to say, babe?
Yes, I do. We could look at all this from a different direction.
Go for it, please.
The fact that there was this widespread distribution of coins during Caligula's reign all over the southern part of Britain could not that simply mean that Caligula had decided on a commercial invasion and sent over droves and droves of merchants to do trade deals for minerals, textiles, and crops, anything like that,
Which is sensible. Yeah.
That's an alternative to consider.
Yes.
Might be totally wrong, but you shouldn't discount that approach, I don't think.
In terms of invasion, right? In terms of invasion, look at the British Empire. We did this with India, with the East India Company, and then we claimed that those parts of India were actually part of the British Empire, right? So why can some historians treat history in one way, and when it comes to Caligula that they want to see as a nut job, they don't see it in that way?
Yeah, but that would indicate, if I'm right, that would indicate there was a general acceptance of Rome because they came over peaceful intent,
yes,
for trading purposes.
Yes,
because we know that centuries before the trade had been going on between the two, especially tin, etc., for metal making.
Yes.
So, and then all of a sudden, Claudius comes along and says, "No, I've had enough of this. Let's go in and grab the lot. Forget about this this trading thing."
And actually, we've been saying that with Julius Caesar.
Yeah.
There's lots in what you've just said. That there is some sound plan in what you've just said, Bill. There really is. There really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, that's my bit, Carl.
Okay, then. Thank you very much. What about you, Richard? Anything you'd like to say?
No, very interesting.
Good. And before we get on to, well, we'll do Goff and then Henry. Anything you want to say, Goff?
Oh, very good. I agree. I sort of concur with what Bill was saying. So I agree with those comments. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. And then what we need to do is then we need to look at what our learned friend from France needs to say, Henry.
The Solent. River
What about it?
River Itchen. On the bend of the River Itchen, you've got Clausentine, AD 43, Roman military port, running through to AD 400.
And if you've got a Roman military port straight away, how the hell is it there?
Yeah, 50 acres.
Give me that location again. Give me that location. What is it?
It's called Bitton Manor. I used to live 2.5 miles from it.
Bitton Manor on the Solent. I know. Obviously, I know.
No, it's on the River Itchen.
River Itchen, and it's classed as a Roman port.
A Roman military port. Right, it's right on the bend of the river.
And do you know? I really appreciate it. Do you know the point? One point I didn't make then. I should have. Like one point. Is that if we look at any invasion, for example, okay, D-Day, right? That wasn't planned in a day, right? They'd been planning that since 1942, right? They'd been building that up since 1942 to get mainland France back, and that's in a modern day, you know, having ships and having planes and all the rest of it, building that up over 3 years to invade again, you know, to get France back. And so it's very, I'm going down a rabbit hole next week with the Temple of Claudius, right? And there's a piece of evidence I found to do with Caligula in Colchester, right? Which is odd. And we'll look at that next week. It's an inscription.
Well, from this site, you've got roads leading to Winchester and to Chichester.
And obviously what we do know about Chichester, it was a pre-Roman site, which was pro-Roman, right? And it's there. And put it this way: if you're moving a small army from a port, right, say Calais, and you're moving it over to, say, for example, Chichester, right? Is that classed as an invasion? You know, it's what is an invasion, and it's like, what could Caligula be seen to have achieved? And hopefully we'll look at a little bit more about that next week. Thank you very much for that. Anything else from you, Henry?
No, I left you some other things in the post.
All right, then I'll certainly have a look at them. I'll certainly have a look at them. Okay, then. Well, I really appreciated that. If nobody else has got anything else to say, I've really appreciated it. Oh, go on, Bill. Quick. Bill, go on.
Yeah. Does Henry exist, or is he an AI clone or something? Because we never see him.
Well, no, that's because he's got a bottle
Henry.
That's because he's got a bottle of wine with him.
Oh, yeah. He's something to hide, Henry.
He's got a bottle of wine and he's got a sexy woman on his lap.
Ah, that's it, is it?
No, a glass of Jameson's.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. Could be worse. It could be Jack Daniels. Never mind.
Oh, don't touch American stuff.
Oh, Kraken. I've had to get a bloody bottle of Kraken for Michelle's birthday. Flipping heck. She said, "Get me some Kraken rum." All right then. Yeah, brilliant. Thanks. It took me a while to find some, but I got some.
Tesco sell it.
Well, yeah, great. We don't have a Tesco's in West Wales. Thank you very much for that.
Well, there you are. You want to move?
Shut up. I ended up getting it from Amazon, but that's life. Anyway, if nobody else has got anything else to say, I really appreciate you joining us this week. So I'm going to say good night. So Thank you, guys. Good night, Bill, Goff,
Thank you.
Henry, and
Bye.
Richard. And thanks for everybody's contributions. Night, night, guys.
Good night.
Bye.
Night, night, guys. Night, night. Night, night, Billis. Night, night, Henry.
Good night. And enjoy
Night, night.
yourself.
I need to lie down.
There you are. You can look up Bitten Manor now.
I've got it written down. I don't write much down, but I've got that written down. Brilliant. Okay, night, night, guys. Thank you for that.
Adios.
Adios, amigo. Everybody's gone. Everybody's left me. So I'm just gonna have a quick look on the doodah. Oh God, I really don't feel well now. So so I said feel unwell at the end of that. So I'm just gonna see if there's anybody on the live. Roman Caligula. It'd be a shame if there was anyone on here. Now, if anyone is here on the chat, I can say hello to them on the chat, and good to have you on YouTube. Do you know, I'm so tight, right, that I cut that bit there, right? See if I can get anything more out. Okay. I don't think anyone's getting the notifications that we're on YouTube, that we're on live. I don't know why. Thing is, if I was on like for 10 hours, right, and there was nobody on the live, how the freaking hell does that work out? I don't know. Okay, anyway, thank you very much, guys. Okay, let's have a little look in the chat. Nothing in the chat one. Nostachi, Golochieto, thank you for joining us. We're back next Tuesday and Wednesday at 7:10. Thank you. Okay, diolch yn fawr i chi. Nosta, nothing 1, nothing 2, nothing 3, nothing 4, 5, 6, 7, nothing in that box 8, nothing in that box 9, nothing in that box 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.